Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, why South Asians are fighting and dying in Russia's war on Ukraine.
They told him just sign and it's a helper's job. They trusted the agents and signed it. After that, they were sent to the front line.
And why what they face when they arrive isn't exactly what they sign up for. I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take. When Russia began offering incentives last year for foreign fighters and its military, things like a hefty salary and citizenship, it made waves across the world, including in Hyderabad, India, where the news reached Mohammed, a retail worker. It's a story Al Jazeera Colombo correspondent Minelle Fernandez has been covering.
Mohammed basically had been struggling with sort of day-to-day cost of living. So this family with two very young kids, the husband had been looking at greener pastures or anything that would help them sort of, improve their lives.
And so when he stumbled upon a YouTube channel titled Baba Vlogs, he thought it could be his lucky break. The job in the YouTube video seemed like a job he could do, not fighting himself, but working as a cleaner for the Russian military.
Some of them had been told, like where the jobs were porter jobs, that it might involve sort of a mop-up or a clean-up operation, like say after the army had gone through a particular area, it might have been clearing the debris, sanitizing the place, that kind of thing. But definitely from what they were told and assured, they would not be, carrying weapons and having to fight for themselves.
It promised a salary double his current one and a Russian passport.
It is always a stepping stone, possibly to the West. It might be a pathway, if you like, to Europe.
But once Mohammed signed the contract and was whisked away to a land more than 6,000 kilometers away, what he got on the ground was something completely different.
And so the guy basically put in his application, took it up, and at the end of the day, a few weeks later, ended up in Russia, was taken to the front lines.
Mohammed was terrified, and so was his family. He would call every so often, until the end of last year. December 31st was the last time his family heard from him. Then, weeks later, his family received a call.
His brother, in fact, gets a frantic call from a fellow Indian who had been on the front line with Mohammed, and he told them that Mohammed had had 2 gunshot injuries and that he was in a really bad state. And this guy had said that he managed to get away from the front line and was hiding in Moscow.
And Mohammed wasn't the only one.
Announcing the deaths of the soldiers, Nepal's Ministry of Foreign Affairs urged Russia to repatriate the bodies to Nepal, as well as provide compensation to the deceased families.
So I talked to Minelle, Al Jazeera's Colombo correspondent, to hear more of those stories. So Minelle, this is not unique to India. There are men not just from India, but also Nepal and Sri Lanka fighting in the war in Ukraine. We're not sure exactly how many, I understand, but estimates range from hundreds to thousands.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what you found.
So it's like this. The 3 countries that we looked at and sort of examined and addressed for our story, it was India, it was Nepal, and it was Sri Lanka. And each of them have their sort of own unique circumstances. In India, in most of the cases that we investigated, these were not ex-military or retired military type people. These were general workers, in pursuit of greener pastures, hoping, to sign up for a well-paying job. Yes, they did realize they would be going into a conflict zone, but they were appeased and they believed what they were told when they were told that these were not frontline jobs. Now, in Nepal, which has a long history of, their military supporting other governments, it's a lot of ex-military people or retired military people. And the largest number seems to be from Nepal and in also Russia as well as Ukraine. In terms of the situation now where Sri Lanka is concerned, obviously, after more than 25 years of conflict, there are big numbers of military, ex-military people who have retired. And given the crazy economic crisis that this country went through, I mean, a lucrative job is a godsend. But somehow the numbers again, this is either word of mouth or from what we're hearing, aren't as large as in the other two countries. But because things are not official, there's no official channel like a government-to-government channel where these guys register, there's no proper clear idea of the scale of this thing or the exact numbers of how many men are in the war zone on either side of the battle line. So that is actually the greatest dilemma.
Okay, so you mentioned Muhammad, the retail worker in India. His wife's name is Asma. What do we know about what he was being offered and how lucrative it really was?
So from that document that we got from his wife, basically the document itself, from what we have got somebody to translate it and tell us what it says, is very much a standard military contract. It talks about, keeping within the law. It breaks it down in great detail. It's compensation of 195,000 rubles, which I believe is a little over $2,100. So for someone in this region, that's a huge amount of money. And this, feeds into that belief that most of these people were looking for some sort of economic respite from the real burden of the economic problems that they are facing in this region.
Well, along with that salary, there is also the promise of a Russian passport. And it's all part of this package that Russia announced for foreign fighters. But now, once they get on the ground in Russia or Ukraine, what do we know about what they're facing, what the reality is for many of them? I imagine there's a language barrier, there's a culture barrier.
I mean, we had the case of a former Sri Lankan soldier, a guy who was like in his 30s. He had taken retirement. You get this early retirement schemes of the military at certain milestones where they can retire. This former soldier from Sri Lanka, there's a 1.5-hour interview with him on YouTube, in fact. Sadly, this chap was killed in action just last December. But the interview, he was saying the cold, I just can't hack the cold. I was wearing 5 layers of clothing with like 4 pairs of socks and thermals. And because obviously you're talking about South Asia. I mean, currently we've got temperatures of sort of 38 to 40 odd degrees within the region. Right? And all of a sudden you're in minus temperatures. It's unheard of. Half the people in this region haven't ever seen snow in their lives. And all of a sudden you're, living, breathing, your every waking moment is, that's what surrounds you. There's also the issue of the language barrier. In fact, again, one of these interviews, the language barrier is quite a serious issue because you have all these foreign fighters from different countries. This guy was saying sometimes it's actually a threat to the successful completion or carrying out of operations because they can't actually understand each other to the optimum. Plus also, from what we're hearing, it does seem that it's not exactly the sort of smoothest, most high-tech of wars being carried out. I mean, they are going from maybe operation to operation, trying to source equipment. On the face of it, when you look at, trying to carry out a war like that, it's crazy. But that seems to be the reality.
After the break, what are the responses from the governments of India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka? So, Minelle, these men we're talking about are going to another country to fight in a war that's not theirs. It's in an area that, even in its climate, is very different, and they speak a completely different language. And it's an active war zone. What have the governments of Nepal and Sri Lanka done to respond?
There was a meeting that the foreign minister of Nepal had with about 25 to 30 families of men who had gone to Ukraine and some in Russia. And these mothers, these wives, with children, they are desperate. Many of them just dissolving into tears, just even talking about their men. And all they can say is, please bring them back. So the Nepali foreign minister has said that they will get everyone back home, and he went as far as to appeal to every single Nepali citizen not to allow their family members to go to these two countries.
We have asked Russia to immediately stop the recruitment of Nepali nationals in their army, immediately return those who are already serving in the army, repatriate the bodies, treat and return the ones who are wounded.
In fact, from what we hear, the Nepali government has withdrawn or stopped issuing some kind of travel permits that allows people to go to these two countries. So what they're saying is, even if they come back, please ensure that they don't try and go back.
Minelle, from your reporting of this across 3 different countries, what stood out to you the most?
The sheer desperation that is driving these people right across the region to risk their lives for a better tomorrow. It just seems that they're going into it with their eyes wide open, some of them maybe with blinkers on and being naive. But I can't really, for example, you sign up to go to a war zone, you sign up to, support a fighting army. Do you not have an inkling that even in helping that you might be somewhere that a missile might fall, you might get caught, you might be ambushed? You have a sense of the dangers involved. But maybe the desperation has pushed them to kind of blank that side and say, we're going to do this. And to me, that is something that kind of stood out, that people are finding things so difficult in their home countries to make ends meet, to put food on the table for their families, and also to have sort of a comfortable, give maybe their kids a comfortable life. And that's pushing them to take these unmentionable, unspeakable risks, which ultimately will leave their families worse off.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing these stories with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's The Take. This episode was produced by Chloe K. Lee and Sarí el-Khalili, with Zaina Badr, Sonia Abou-Gad, Veronica Campana, David Enders, Miranda Lynn, Ashish Malhotra, Nagin Oliai, Khalid Sultan, Amy Walters, and me, Malika Bilal. Alex Roldan is our sound designer. Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer, and Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. We'll be back.